Good morning. Happy Saturday morning to you. Today I want to talk about early recovery. There's 12 steps in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And of course we start with step 1. Step 1 says we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. That is a tall order for us to come to a realization that we're powerless over alcohol and that our lives have become unmanageable. That's asking a lot of us. I had a hard time with that. For me, the difficulty was the powerlessness. For some reason, I thought that if I just tried harder to drink a different way, but if I could find a way to drink without having any consequences, and I just knew I could because I had done it in the past. See, that was the big setup for me. Was, in the early days of my drinking, there was no downside, no consequences to it. I'd go out, I'd have a fun time, I'd drink, nobody would go to jail, nobody got hurt. So that told me that it was possible to drink and not have consequences. And so that stood in the way. I had that memory of previous days when I did drink and there were no consequences. And denial is very strong. For me, denial was, look, I understand you think I have a problem, but I don't have a problem. You're the one that has the problem with my drinking. So you're the one that needs to get over it. That was my thinking. So to admit that I'm powerless over alcohol, wow. That was not an easy thing for me at all. I just knew that I had the power within me to continue to drink and there not be any downside to it. I just knew it because I'd experienced it before, The second portion of that step, our lives had become unmanageable. It wasn't that way in the beginning, but it did become that way. And by the time I stepped through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, my life was pretty unmanageable. And so that portion of it, I could do. They say that step 1 is the only step that you need to take 100% before you move on. Step 1 is, I have found, if you don't take step 1 100%, it doesn't matter how many of the other steps that you take, you're not going to find recovery. Step 1 is not only the beginning, it's the foundation of recovery. I had no foundation whatsoever. So the way it worked for me was the conditions of my life had to get worse before they could get better. I had to hit a bottom. I had to get to that point where I knew that there's just no way that I was going to be able to do this alone. And that took years, unfortunately. Back in the early days of AA, I heard it when I first started coming around. If you don't think you're an alcoholic, try some more controlled drinking. Come back and see us if you want to. Wow. I took that statement to heart, and I did. I tried some more controlled drinking. And let me tell you something. Conditions got worse. I finally got to a point where I had lost everything that I'd ever feared losing in life, and that was enough. Thank God that was enough. So when I was finally able to fully concede to to my innermost self that I was an alcoholic, that was when things started to change. Because now, there's some hope, at least hope for recovery. I never planned to be an alcoholic. It wasn't something that, I set out to become. I just wanted to enjoy life, and I wasn't enjoying life anymore. Life had become very uncomfortable. It was that being uncomfortable that made it possible for me to recover. When I lost everything that I'd ever feared losing in life, that was how far I had to go. And it's unfortunate. Not all of us have to go that far down. I met a fellow, and his bottom, if you will, his bottom was that he got drunk and knocked over the family Christmas tree and upset Christmas Day. That was enough for him to, oh my God, I got to get sober, I'm going to AA. Good for him. It's not the way it worked for me. The big book talks about like a tornado. The alcoholic is like a tornado, blowing its way through people's lives and stuff. That was me, man. Hurricane Earl. Not a tornado, but a hurricane. Much more widespread. Oh, goodness. So the pain was what was necessary. The pain of losing everything in life that I'd ever feared losing. The pain of that is what was necessary for this alcoholic to come to that realization and to fully concede to my innermost self that I'm powerless. I'm completely powerless over alcohol. And my life is obviously, it's unmanageable. So, if you're watching this video and people are getting on your nerves about your drinking, consider this. It just might be you. Try to put down those big walls of denial and those thoughts in the back of your mind that say, no, I know I can do this. I've done it before. Maybe I'm just, drinking in the wrong places. Or maybe I'm just drinking with the wrong people. Or, maybe I need to switch to something different. Maybe if I just drink beer, I'll be okay. Whatever it takes is what it takes. And, there's nobody that could sober me up. There's nobody that can sober anybody else up. I can't even do my own sobriety. I have to give it to God. But that's another step altogether. This step is admitting powerlessness and unable to manage my life. When I come to that realization that I'm powerless over alcohol and that my life is unmanageable, that creates an open mind. I know it doesn't sound like it would, but it does. It creates an open mind to the possibility that my management skills suck, first of all, and that I need some kind of power other than my own power, because my power is insufficient. So it opens my mind to the possibility that there could be possibly another power. And that's when we move on to step 2, which we'll talk about in the next video. Thank God I finally took step 1 100%, and I acknowledge that step every single day. Dear Lord, I admit that I'm powerless over my addiction. I admit that my life is unmanageable when I try to control it. Help me this day to understand the true meaning of powerlessness. Remove from me all denial of my addiction. I'm going to set up the camera so you can see the ocean and what little bit of sunrise we've got this morning, and give you a little reading out of step 1 in the 12 and 12. Hopefully you guys follow along. We'll eventually talk about all 12, but we have to start somewhere. Okay? So you guys have a good day. Put the plug in the jug and thank God for the life that you have.
Why all this insistence that every AA must hit bottom first? The answer is that few people will sincerely try to practice the AA program unless they have hit bottom. For practicing AA's remaining 11 steps means the adoption of attitudes and actions that almost no alcoholic who's still drinking can dream of taking. Who wishes to be rigorously honest and tolerant? Who wants to confess his faults to another and make restitution for harm done? Who cares anything about a higher power, let alone meditation and prayer? Who wants to sacrifice time and energy in trying to carry AA's message to the next sufferer? No, the average alcoholic, self-centered in the extreme, doesn't care for this prospect, unless he has to do these things in order to stay alive himself. Under the lash of alcoholism, we are driven to AA, and there we discover the fatal nature of our situation. Then and only then do we become as open-minded to conviction and as willing to listen as the dying can be. We stand ready to do anything which will lift the merciless obsession from us.